Mr. Grayson's first period class. I'm Michelle.
And I'm Audrey.
And this is the Double G News Broadcast. Let's talk about some birth control, ladies and gentlemen.
Birth control has finally been legalized for all. In 1960, the first oral contraceptive was developed, but it wasn't popular because it was illegal. And then in 1965, the government made it legal for only married women to use birth control. And so today, in 1970, birth control has become legalized for all.
Wow.
Do you know what happened exactly a year ago today?
The moon landing, of course. I remember it just like yesterday. Buzz Aldrin, Neil Armstrong, and Michael Collins all took of it in a little metal box, headed for the moon. I'll never forget what he said. This one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind. So dreamy.
You know what I remember like it was yesterday? Woodstock. The best three-day music festival of my life. Upstate New York was packed like it never had been before, with a turnout of over 500,000 people. It smelled a little funny, but the music was good.
Yeah, Janis Joplin and Grateful Dead aren't really my style. I'm much more into the punk rock scene.
Okay.
Yeah. My love for it began early 60s. I would watch my boyfriend's band practice in his garage for hours. But now I'm really digging the Sex Pistols and the Ramones. And there you have it, your culture report. We now go to Audrey interviewing Ho Chi Minh.
Hello, Mr. Ho Chi Minh. How are you today?
Upset. The United States need to mind their own business.
They're only trying to destroy communism.
Well, I'm the leader of Vietnam, and I should decide what's best for my people.
But communism is the worst.
Do you see all my men here fighting for us? They all agree on what I am doing. Communism will rise.
We now go to Audrey with some good news about Nixon.
Listen up, folks. Richard Nixon is back at it again with his return to politics in 1968, winning the presidential election against George McGovern in 1972.
You hear that, nation? He's back at it again. We now have some scandalous news for you with Audrey.
The show Scandal has been pretty scandalous. There have been political scandals in America that led to the resignation of a president. They called it Watergate. It was a name taken after a hotel in Washington where President Nixon hired people to steal Democratic campaign secrets. The burglary involved 4 guys who were in the CIA, active against Fidel Castro, and the security chief on the committee to re-elect President Nixon. Throughout the 1972 campaign season, Woodward and Bernstein were given a leak by an anonymous source they called Deep Throat and exposed the whole thing. We now go to an exclusive interview with Muchella and Menachem Begin.
It's nice to meet you, Mr. Begin.
Yes, it is.
Has anyone ever told you look a lot like Ho Chi Minh?
No.
Okay then. How does it feel to finally have gained legitimacy for Israel?
Bad. Those imbeciles forced us to trade fairly and took away our territories. But I did get a fancy trophy.
Well, there you have it, folks. Mr. Menachem Begin.
Breaking news with the president. We have Muchella on the spot.
Ronald Reagan took control of the White House in 1981 on a ticket of conservatism and anti-governmentalism. In his first term, Reagan introduced a Strategic Defense Initiative, a controversial orbital weapon system designed to scare the crap out of the USSR. When he left office, he left America in the largest budget deficit in any nation's history.
Thanks, Obama. We now have a hijacking attempt, and Muchella with an eyewitness.
I'm here with one of the witnesses from the first airplane hijacking. Give me a run through the emotions you felt.
Oh my god, I was so scared. I was like 99% sure I was gonna die.
Wow, did you know who did the hijacking?
Yeah, it was done by members of the Arab terrorist group, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine.
What did they do in the plane?
Well, they came out of the blue and started holding us hostage and demanding the plane was redirected to Algiers.
And there you have it, folks. A witness from a terror on airlines. Another news tonight comes from Afghanistan, where the Soviets have invaded them.
Thanks, Muchella. I'm here live in Afghanistan, where the Soviets have sent thousands of troops on order from Moscow to replace the Hafizullah admin with the Soviet-endorsed Karmal as head of the Democratic Republic of Afghanistan. The Politburo, which is the political bureau of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, has announced that by overthrowing admin, the Afghan president, they will ease peace of Afghanistan's communist revolution and protect the communist regime from collapsing. Back to you. We now go live to Mucella in Palestine.
Yeah, hello. I'm here in Palestine, where the conflict over land has come to one of the deadliest phases. Israel has left warning to King Hussein, where he has disregarded, and Israel has launched raids against the West Bank towns. They have left 18 dead and 54 wounded. With the response of mobilization of Arab neighbors, Israel has staged a preemptive air assault that destroyed 90% of Egypt's air force. Within days, Israel has captured the Gaza Strip and all of Sinai Peninsula. With this war, it has marked the start of the new phase conflict. Back to you. We now go to Audrey with some more news in the Middle East.
Please, ma'am, tell me what Ayatollah is.
Well, ma'am, we are people with enormous power and prestige. Ayatollah is an Arabic term meaning sign of God.
Thank you so much. You can leave now.
Oh.
Well, folks, Ayatollah Khomeini returned from 14 years in exile and replaced the Shah of Iran as head of state when it collapsed. He declared an Islamic republic and was appointed Iran's political and religious leader for life. In September of 1980, a territorial dispute occurred when Iraq launched a surprise invasion against Iran. This ended in an 8-year dispute in which neither side achieved their aim of toppling the other regime. Instead, 500,000 people died. I'm telling you, fighting isn't the way.
To summarize all these events, birth control was granted approval in 1960. It is important because it gave women more rights and aided in protection. It also decreased unwanted pregnancy. This is still important today because women are still trying to fight for rights like equal pay. Ho Chi Minh was important because he was a communist leader of Vietnam through 1954 and 1969. He was successful in leading his country's fight against the U.S. between 1954 and 75 during the Vietnam War. Richard Nixon changed the course of American politics. It shows that you can't trust everything politicians are saying. The moon landing shows people advances in technology and that it's greater than we think it is. Woodstock really brought people together. It was a 3-day music festival that was exclusive to everyone. The Watergate scandal that occurred in 1972 and 74, it showed how untrustworthy politicians were at the time and how you need to question everything you were told. 1977 was a year of punk rock music. It was a new style of music and the fans were loud, oddly dressed, and they had multiple piercings. Begin was born in 1913. He fled Poland to escape the German and Russian armies. He was imprisoned in 1937 for leading a protest against British policies in Palestine. Later on in 1977, he became Prime Minister of Israel. Reagan won presidency in 1980 at a second attempt because he failed in 1976. He was shot in 1981 in an unsuccessful assassination attempt, and then in 1989 he left America in the largest budget deficit in any nation's history. Palestine is a large conflict between Israel over land. It still continues today with thousands of people dying. Ayatollah is a person that was exiled for 14 years, and when Iran was collapsing, he took over as head of state for life. He was demonized particularly in America, where he was described as the Great Satan, because Americans were held hostage in the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, which is the capital of Iran, in 1979. The Soviet Union entered Afghanistan to protect communist interests. To protect communist interests in the country on order from Moscow, rebels were supported by the United States, and after a long, costly war, the Soviets were forced to withdraw from the country. And also the Carter administration was thinking about new trade restrictions against the Soviets and a boycott of 1980 Summer Olympics that were to be held in Moscow. And that is the summarization of all these events and why we would say Billy Joel put all these events in his song.